The Mavericks, though, like the reason why I said they're the winners of it is just like the peak Doncic is like you're talking like superstar level player, and Porzingis too. Like when he was healthy, we saw flashes of that.
Totally.
And I think there's areas of Porzingis' game, like his like perimeter defense, his passing, like how he reacts to being double teamed, shot selection, stuff like that. Like he's not a flawless player, but like the way he could protect the rim, the way he could stretch the floor, the way he could score on the inside, like he is so dangerous from like pretty much every area of the court offensively, and then he is such a good defender when he's inside the paint. He can deter people. Like if he can stay healthy, I think like that tandem is really imposing, and they're both enormous and versatile too. And like you see, I think it was Donnie Nelson, or maybe it was Rick Carlisle, one of the power brokers in Dallas, like immediately said like we want them to be our next Steve Nash and Dirk Nowitzki, and like it's a little bit like of an easy comparison to make, but like those are the cornerstones of their team, and they're going every decision that they make from here on out, whether it's who they sign in free agency, whether it's who they draft, whether it's potential trades they can make, like it will all be about maximizing those two guys. And I think rebuilding gets a lot simpler when you have those pillars there, and then you can make decisions that are based on that, when you're not just like wildly trying to just collect talent.
Right, random guys throwing them in there.
And just sort of, and look, like that's part of it too when you're at your earliest stages. Like I thought like what the Sixers were doing when they started the process was just trying to get the guys who they thought had the most talent or had the most trade value and throw them together, and they didn't really care about positional needs because they weren't trying to win yet.
Right.
But I think when you can already have those guys that have proven it, that even though they're young, like this was just Doncic's rookie season, but like he was playing at a high level in Europe that like we've never seen before.
Absolutely, and another guy who's just 19, 20 years old.
Yeah, but I think there's such sure things that you're like, all right, like you know that those like that's their version. Like we said, Nash Nowitzki, but like that could be their version of like, all right, we have our Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid now, so this is no longer about like this like 10-year plan. Like
right, it's about now.
It's about like sort of now, like the next few
couple years.
So the next few years. So I think it's not like we expect Dallas to go and be in the championship picture next year, but I think their next decade is going to be built around what these two guys can do.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll see what happens with Porzingis after the knee injury, and obviously how those two fit together. But you wrote the whole oral history on Dirk and talked to a bunch of people. Like to go from Dirk to Luka and KP, I mean, that works out phenomenally for them. But when you wrote that piece, what are some little things you learned about Dirk, and just describe his impact on that whole organization?
I mean, in many ways, he is the Mavericks, right? And that's what a lot of people around him said. And it's such an interesting kind of career arc for him, because when he came into the league, he was so unsure of himself. Like talking to Donnie Nelson, who was like there when he was drafted, like they weren't sure if he was even going to come over. Like the Mavericks contingent had to fly over to Germany, meet with him and Holger, who's his trainer slash mentor slash life coach, whatever you want to call him. He's a guy in like any like. If you watch the Dirk documentary or anything, like you see that.
He's with him all the time.
The older German guy that is feeding him shots and making him do weird exercise on the court, that's Holger. But he's been a part of his life since he was like, like 15, 16 years old. And so there you have Donnie Nelson together in Würzburg, Germany, trying to tell Dirk and Holger, like, we think you should come over now. And he's like, well, I'm not sure if I'm ready. Like Holger, I think initially wanted him to stay for a couple more years in Europe, get stronger, get more physically ready for the NBA. Dirk comes over, and initially, like his English was not nearly as good as it is now. It's a culture shock, in a bunch of different ways. Adjusting to the game was not super easy. I think he shot like 20% from three.
It was a rough start for his career. People forget that.
Yeah, and he and Steve Nash was the guy that sort of helped him get adjusted to life in Dallas. They were inseparable. They would be at the facility shooting together. Like those tales have been told a million times. But I think you forget that like they were both booed. At Reunion Arena.
Crazy to
back
think.
then. I mean, Nash was playing through an injury that had kind of limited him, and Dirk was kind of just trying to feel out the league. And they'd passed up Paul Pierce. They actually had to have a last-minute discussion on draft night. Like, what do? We did not expect Paul Pierce to be there.
drop
Like
to us,
Dirk
yeah.
and Paul Pierce were both in their top 3, and like Dirk was above him, but it was kind of like they didn't think they'd actually have to make that decision.
Right.
And they went with the guy they believed in and thought had the biggest upside, even though even internally they were like, yeah, Paul Pierce could win Rookie of the Year.
That's
and
a
Paul Pierce
huge risk
is a
at
short
that time.
thing.
Yeah.
And it's a risk because they don't know if they're going to even have their jobs if Dirk becomes the player that he eventually does. And if not for Mark Cuban being the rare owner who buys a team and then doesn't tear everything down, but actually just, no, we'll
Gives
see how
it
this
time.
goes. Like,
Yeah.
he could have easily gotten rid of all those guys, and they wouldn't have
Totally.
seen what ended up happening with Dirk. So to sort of track his career from back then when, like, you know, he and Steve Nash are, like, just kind of, I mean, I wouldn't, like, Steve is such an easygoing guy, like, socially can fit in anywhere, whatever, but, like, Dirk is sort of a fish out of water, just trying to, like, stay by his side and just kind of get adjusted to the whole situation. And to see how he not only improved on the court, but eventually took on a leadership role, became this guy who is now, like, an ambassador for the game and synonymous with the Mavericks, and turned into this like hilarious trash talker. I mean,
Wild
the
career arc,
yeah,
seriously.
Like, I mean, the reason why the story was fun to do is because you talk to guys and like we're talking to guys like Dennis Smith, who was teammates with him in the last couple of years, or talking to guys like Greg Buckner or Adrian Griffin from like
The way back,
earlier
yeah.
stages in his career, and like they all have stories of him like. Whether it's like him like calling up Nick Van Exel on his first road trip and leaving a voicemail for him in his hotel room where he's like playing guitar and singing to him, or whether he and Dennis Smith last year having a race before a practice where Dirk is supposed to start at half court and Dennis Smith is supposed to start at the baseline,
Yeah.
and then they go 3-2-1. Dennis starts running and Dirk just turns around and is like, oh no, I wasn't ready. Like, we'll do this. Like
Absolute character.
Yeah, like just stuff like that from over the course of his entire career.